Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam. This is a podcast for people who love to read and who read to escape into worlds of magic and adventure. But don't let that adventure end when you finish your book.
Join us on Escapists Anonymous to carry on the conversation. Welcome back. Episode 2 in our 3-episode series covering the Green Bone Saga by Fonda Lee. And this week it's Jade War, Book 2, the often difficult Book 2 in the 3-book series.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, I think in previous trilogies, it's often been the main criticism. Everything feels like a bit of a readjustment for the middle of the big finale. I would say at the top of this episode, and spoilers ahead for everybody, is I think this is actually a very good second novel.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, it doesn't feel like it's just maneuvering everything. It feels like its own contained series of, like, events that happen. I may have preferred, we'll get into it, but I may have preferred this to the first book.
It's definitely strong, I think, as a second book, and it doesn't do the, like you say, the moving the chess pieces around, getting ready for the final book. Or if it is doing that, it's not necessarily obvious that that's what's happening, and that makes it good and readable and enjoyable in its own right. Yeah.
I think where this book ends, it feels like, okay, similar to the first one, we've got an ending to stuff, but there's a bit more that's kind of like, well, we have a sense of where this is heading, because as we're traveling further along that line of, well, where these characters going to end. I mean, like, I feel like there's going to be, I know the third book's bigger. There's a lot to fit in, I feel, to really get, unless, like, it doesn't cover all the things that I'm expecting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But before we get any further, let's just catch people up by doing a bit of another blurb.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Magic divides, power corrupts, family endures. The Call family is locked in a violent feud for control of the capital of Kekon and the supply of magical jade that endows Green Bone warriors with supernatural abilities. Beyond Kekon's borders, war is brewing. Powerful foreign governments and mercenary criminal kingpins alike turn their eyes to the island nation's most prized resource. Faced with threats on all sides, the Calls must do whatever it takes to ensure their families and all Greenbone's survival. Jade War is a powerful second novel in the Green Bone Saga, a modern fantasy classic, a word-of-mouth sensation, and an Asian-inspired metropolis. There you go. I do still, like, it opens with magic divides. Is Jade magic? It feels so functional. I don't know, like, as it is, like, it's magic. It's doing something that's beyond normal world stuff that we can relate to. But just because of how it's presented in this novel particularly, as we learn more about Aspenia, like the whole bioenergetic jade, it feels like science. It feels like utilising a natural resource to achieve something.
And the fact that they've created this sort of synthetic SN1 thing that that's kind of doing a similar thing and whatever. It's like, okay, well, they're looking at this like a science. Maybe that's the marketing. People are looking at it as a fantasy book and want to see the word magic somewhere. And that's
the marketing at work there in the blurb, isn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of my big reflections, I guess, on this is that these books, or especially so far, it feels like it's not about the power, the physical powers that Jade gives you. As much as anything else, it's about the politics of Jade, or the cultural significance of Jade. And the powers actually take quite a back seat for much of what we've read. Obviously, there's these big moments where, being able to steal or deflect or whatever, in these action scenes becomes really relevant. But actually, these books are about the politics, the economics of controlling the supply and demand and all of that soft power and hard power stuff that goes on in geopolitical.
There's almost like,
debate
imagine if uranium could only be found on a single island, and like how that would be approached, and what that would do to that particular island nation. And like I do feel that it's a nature of how you market things, and the restrictiveness of genres. In that, yes, this is fantasy, and by the nature of having something like that in it, it kind of dictates it needs to be branded as a fantasy. But it's not. It's more of a crime family saga. Like, I'm constantly reading this. I'm like, this is kind of like a book version of Sopranos.
Yeah,
something like that. That's why I see it more as like, yes, it's not necessarily set in New Jersey. It's set in a more kind of like, Hong Kong, Singapore kind of environment. But it's just focusing on a family who aren't criminals. Of course, they're a clan, but like they behave in certain similar ways. There's the inherent violence within the structure of their organization, the battles. It's not solved through politics alone. There is times when they have to resort to slaughtering in the streets.
Yeah, and it is strange how they have these conversations where they're talking about straying into criminal activity, and you're like, hold on, let me just get my head around this, because it just like, where is this line that you're drawing between like the legitimate criminal activity that you do literally every single day and this thing that is apparently frowned upon, like or prohibited? But
isn't it so interesting how we, because we have the character of Andon going over to Espenia, to Port Massey, and I think it's a really good part of the book because it helps put Kekon in kind of a direct contrast with another culture, and how, not just Espinians see it, but also Keko-Espinians, who have a mixture of those two experiences, like his love interest of Corey, and how he's just like, I wear jade, but I don't show it. And like, it is an effective, useful thing that I do, but I also kind of reject the culture. And so Andon's watching him going like, why do they not act like respectful green bones? And, he interacts with the crews, and he's just like, well, of course, I offer you a clean blade, pom, 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 takes down that guy. And everyone's like, what are you doing? He'll kill you. He's like, but of course I did it in completely balanced combat. This was appropriate. It's just like, what it almost feels like Data from Star Trek Next Generation going to a thing being, oh, yes, this is a very interesting human interaction. It's like, you're in danger. You're in danger.
Yeah. Yeah, and Andon's storyline was my favourite, I think, in this, and that kind of opening up of the world, and getting to see what it's like in Port Massey and Espenia, like you're saying, kind of the, you've got the, the immigrant community that he's immersed and based in, but then also, like you say, kind of seeing the differences with those, the criminal crews, and they are actually criminals in that country doing exactly the same things that the clans are doing in.
But this is it, like,
Kekon.
What's his name? Dork Loson. He is a guy who's a pillar of a Kekonese community, and it's just like, okay, well, you're doing illegal activity because you're doing cockfighting and fights, grudge matches. But like, you don't see yourself as criminals, whereas the crews definitely see themselves as operating outside of the law in a much more kind of like very literal way.
Yeah,
and it's just like it acts as that bridge between like because we were talking about it with Jade City, like they within the context of Kekon, of course it's not a crime. This stuff is all perfectly acceptable, but you put it anywhere else, it's like, that's murder. It's just murder.
Yeah,
like you're just taking someone else's life, and they were like, oh, but the crew's honorable. Like, sure, we take tribute, but we give something back. We help funded businesses, we keep them protected, whereas they just take the money. And you're like, okay, I see your distinction here, but they don't have to pay that tribute. Like, you're not the government taxing them. So, I get it. It's great that you give it back, but also, like, what are we doing here? You're doing it for your own personal gain, surely. Yeah,
definitely. But I mean, I think Andon's whole story arc was I think I now don't feel like it's going in the direction that I originally thought.
Where do you think it would go?
Well, so I had this thing in my head that the police officer in Die Hard, where he's like, like the ending is like, thank goodness he figured out how to shoot and kill someone again. Like, isn't that a happy ending type of thing? I thought Andon was kind of going to go down that route where it's like,
right.
he finally got the nuts to snap someone's neck and murder again. Like, we can all rest easy at night. But obviously he's going maybe down a different route now.
And his experience gave us a bit more of an understanding of channeling as like one of the other, disciplines, because we hadn't really seen it, but like, oh, right, there's the implication of like, I mean, he literally brought Wen back from the dead.
Yeah.
And I feel like, maybe again, it's because he's so powerful that, like he could do that, whereas the average person couldn't. So we're still getting that sense of his immense power, and everyone was like, whoa, what did he do? Yeah. So it's almost like they found a way to kind of change that act of like coming back and doing a big kill. He did a big save.
Yeah, but it was more about resetting his relationship with Jade than it was about like killing or anything else. It's like, oh, actually, because of the cultural stuff within, Jean, what's it called? John Loon, yeah, and Kekon. Jade is seen as this thing for warriors and killing and violence, and obviously, healing and channeling is a part of it, but it's kind of been this thing that's like, oh, that's just another kind of thing that you can do with it, but that's also for warriors to do when they get injured. But he's kind of reset what the way that you can use Jade and like, do
you think he'll become the best doctor ever? Do you think he'll be like in the next book? He'll be like, I'm literally bringing people back from the dead, and like he's going to be directing, like doing some kind of thing that's like world famous, like a man saves person from death, and it's going to be thrusting him to a different kind of limelight from like what Hilo might want.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the fact that he's coming back to Kekon at the end of that makes me think like there's a more prominent role for him to play kind of within the clan somehow. And I'm not really sure, like that could go in several different directions really, I think. And like there's still this sort of outside chance that he could get pulled into a situation because he's wearing Jade again, where he's forced to kind of use it for
protected by Aisho, like
But I think he's still going to be involved in clan stuff, and that's going to put him in situations where he maybe has to make a decision. Because I guess the scenario I'm thinking is he's wearing Jade, he's back in Kekon, there's the clan. Stuff going on, and he's forced to make a decision to either use the Jade for violence and killing again, or I guess not.
Yeah, I wonder if like, if he does become a doctor, what happens if like a prominent member of the Mountain Clan comes in for an operation and Hilo's like, you got to kill him. Like, like this is your chance to kill him. And solve this thing. So I think with Andon, I think there's definitely potential for him to be pulled more into the clan stuff when he's back. It's inevitable because it's just the nature of the story. Like it would be really weird if he just remains like a nice kind of happy remove from everything that's going on. He just pops by for like, oh, my own story in this novel is just I'm a happy medical student and it's all going really well. Like I can't imagine it's going to be that. But I mean, all his other experiences over there, like we got to see more about his emotional side, his relationship with Corey, and also that kind of mix of Kekonese, Aspenian culture. How he understands his and rejects his Aspenian side, whereas Corey's just like, no, it's more of who I am. Like he sees himself as more Aspenian than Kekonese. It's just like, well, because of how I was born, I can wield Jade. So like, great.
And I think some of that stuff is, I think one of the criticisms we had of Jade City was around kind of starting off with getting lots of insights into the emotions and the motivations of people like Andon and Shay, and then as the book went on, it became more just like we're just watching them carry out activities that they're involved in, and this, you know, went more back into like being on a journey with Andon and understanding how he's emotionally kind of affected and impacted by things, that, you know, the romance, the, you know, the conflict between, you know, his like you're saying, sort of his traditional upbringing and the culture that he's seeing. So I think I enjoyed his story more because it had more of that stuff in this time round. And did it fall off again a bit more towards the end?
Well, because just other stuff was going on. But I will say, like, it's the end of his story where he does save Wen's life and gets involved. And I was just like, oh, this is a good ending for him. You know, where we are. Like, I mean, again, like, you sometimes have big gaps where characters just aren't in it for a bit because other areas of the storyline need to be driven. But because he was so instrumental, I feel like it was, you know, still good use of him within the novel.
Yeah.
I mean, the other one you mentioned as well was Shay. Like, I think this was a much stronger novel of her. I mean, like, the center of the novel is her duel with Ait Madashi. And I was just like, that was such a cool bit. Like, her stepping up, like, moving into being the weatherman and, like, the business. And then, like, you know, I love it. Just, Ait Madashi's like, everyone over in the Cole family are absolute slags. I hate them, you know, like, and she's just like, you shut up. Clean blade. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. And I thought, like, genuinely, like, Madashi can't die, so could we have another kind of like with Lan, like another call?
There was a moment I was like, we're losing Shay. But I think, I agree. It was a really, really cool scene. There was a really cool moment where obviously she slices Ait Madashi's ear off, and there's a moment where Ait Madashi realizes that she's underestimated Shay. Like that you know, that she could actually die here. Has Shay had the abortion that morning?
It was it was like the day before or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So like I'm like, oh, this kind of I know, I'm not sure whether it was a deliberate thing or whatever. I was like, imagine if Shay was like full health.
Yeah, well, you know, like, there's this whole thing of, like, the Kekonese being like, you know, when you win, well, of course, it was because of this. And, you know, like, with Shay, you're like, well, of course, I wasn't fighting at full force because I had an abortion. Yeah. just the other day. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's an unusual excuse. But this event with Shay, it kind of... It's kind of quite a good example of one of the gripes I continue to have with both of the novels so far, is that the way Fonda Lee writes is there's such an excessive amount of thought exposition that goes on in tense moments or unnecessary. Like, there are other ways that probably could have been done better. Like, in this point, she's like, oh, my stomach. She's like, but of course, Ait Madashi would never have gone ahead like with this, seeing people chanting and knowing that the fight had been had and everything had been leveled off, that it would be actually kind of unseemly for her to strike her down now. Therefore, she knows by offering her, you know, up her jade as it is, that of course it would set us. I'm just like, okay, thank you for explaining this while Shay is bleeding out on the floor with her guts out. I was like,
that thought has happened in a moment.
Like, Ike looks over at the crowd and sees people and like knows exactly how everyone feels, and I was just like, there's got to be a better way to explain this moment that isn't right in the middle of this crucial bit. Like, you could just tell us this with like a single glance or something, like, you know, just, do you feel that there's a bit of an excessive amount of like...
And I think the criticism that I had from the first one, that I think the writing is a bit rough around the edges. I think that is a part of this, where it's like the feeling that she needs to sort of explain things a bit more than is actually necessary, and we don't need to have that explanation there, but that could be, and we don't really need that explanation at all. Like, we don't have to understand why Madashi, like,
we can intuit it from knowing the personalities. But there's that point where, like, you know, Wen watches her brother get killed by the car bomb. And like up until that point, it'd been such a good, like it felt like it was a scene from The Godfather or something like that. You know, like I'm getting down to the park to play, everything simple. Suddenly, the intrusion into such a peaceful moment, you know, everything kicks off, and then she's running with her children towards the shop, and we get the explanation. Of course, she could, of course, take refuge inside the shop because a lantern man would have to give her refuge because of this, and this. It's like, yeah, we get it. We know how lantern men work by this point. I'm like 500-600 pages into like 2 novels,
and I think that that's exactly it. It's like sometimes the writing feels as though it's explaining something to us as though it's in the first chapter.
Yeah,
that like we wouldn't know otherwise. Like that could have been done with dialogue. Just literally, she walks into the shop like, I am, you know, cool when, you know,
there's been a car bomb.
Yeah, like everybody knows who Cool Wen is because they're in the clan, and like you know the person who owns the shop could have been like, oh, you know,
yeah, absolutely. Come on back. The loyal lanternmen reacted immediately, as was you know as was the standard response.
With immediate recognition, they hurried her into the back, and like I think that goes on kind of, you know, throughout this whole book, where I think at a certain point, you know, I had to just be like, well, this is the way it's written. It probably could be, you know, a bit shorter if these bits weren't in altogether.
And I just think sometimes it works, like with the Anden chapters, when he's reflecting upon the differences between Espinian and Kekonese culture in the quieter moments when it's not in the middle of a scene. It works because it's like, he would be pondering the nature of like how he exists in the society as someone who's come over, and like he's respected more by the parents, and then they respect them more than their own children because they see them as abandoning the ways. And you know, he doesn't understand why his children don't just adhere to their parents' wishes. And it's just like, this is stuff you would have while wandering down the streets in between 2 locations, like absolutely. So you know, like it's almost like, you know, she's taken this aspect of her writing, which is really effective in some places, but overplays it, and we end up with these bits that are quite jarring. I do agree, and unfortunately I think like the world building and the plot were good enough to ride that out, and just sort of coming back onto that, Shay has to literally execute her ex-boyfriend, who she's still kind of in love with. Oh my god, yeah.
Like that is, and like it's like a mercy killing as well, because the you know, the Make brothers on his way back, and she knows that if she doesn't do that, he's going to torture him for a long time. But like I was like, oh, this is like savage. And
you know, and he knew what needed to be done. Like he turns up at the compound, he's like, I done effed up. Like I'm really, really sorry, but like just make sure like my family who I love over there is safe. She's like, really sorry. Crack. Like, well, how does she kill him? She
channels into his brain, doesn't she, and gives him like an aneurysm or something.
Talking of brutal deaths, something that really affected my opinion of Hilo was, of course, the way he killed Amy over in Steppenland. Like, horrendous. Like, I completely... I mean, and I'll come on to it in a bit. Like, I understand more about how his character functions. I understand that it's in keeping with his character.
Yeah.
But it did not make me endeared towards him anymore. I like him a lot less, and all the events that happen afterwards, and all the times he's been affable and nice and understanding about other things that people in Kekonese culture wouldn't usually be. He's like, I don't care if you're a stone eye, I don't care if you're this. He's just like, yeah, but you just killed a woman, like an innocent woman, like absolutely horrendously, and then kidnapped her child. Sorry, what?
Yeah. I mean,
how did you feel when you read that bit? Like, what was
it? Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, you can sort of see it coming, like a few paragraphs earlier, where you're like, oh, okay, this is going to get dark really, really quick. And then, I mean, I guess it's a really interesting element of the story, because in his head, like, it's a totally justifiable thing to do, and obviously it creates all these implications for how the story can go in potentially like later on. But I mean, I find the whole Hilo thing really, like, I really, really enjoyed Hilo's development in this book, like, because I think he he's really interesting as a father. Like, he's a really great father. Like, he's he's dedicated, and he's present with his children, and he gives them time, and he understands the importance of that. And it's so weird to have like the two sides of this coin that can be like so brutal, but with this kind of honor-based thing that's justifying and motivating it, but also this really like gentle, loving person. But also I feel like he really grows as a leader in a way that is really believable. Like his experience of this kind of Jade War, for want of a better term, given to us on a plate by Fonda Lee as the title of the book. It's like he becomes this like really good like wartime leader.
So, and I think there's a reference to it in the book. Like, Lan could never have handled this situation.
Yeah.
He was a peacetime pillar.
Yeah, and his ability to take on board that his sort of trusted inner circle's perspective.
Yeah,
in decision making. He's not like it's my way or the highway thing. It's like it becomes like a theme of his leadership that he gathers with the people that he trusts, and they help him to make decisions. And
I just said, like, with his how he operates as a pillar. Like, I just want to jump back to the start of the novel where like Shay can't kill Doru. And then with the influence of Hilo and her understanding of how she needs to commit to the clan, because at that point she's just like, I just can't do this kind of stuff. This stuff's beyond me. And then with Hilo's constant presence, and then the duel with Ait Madashi, and then she's just like, and now I have to kill my boyfriend. And it's just like, oh yeah, you've moved over to being more into Hilo's line, because he has this inner circle, and he has this kind of like the way he operates is infectious. Like, everyone's like, yeah, of course, he's so committed. This is how I'm committed too.
But do you think there's actually like a sort of convergence, like they're both influencing each other to be more like, so Shay's making Hilo kind of more considered, and I think kind of Wen does this as well a little bit, kind of uses her influence on Hilo to make him think a little bit more, but and then his influence on Shay is like, you can't do this like you can't do half measures if you're going to do the clan thing. Yeah.
I think with Wen, like, she's still operating and growing separate from Hilo, and that's going to have to, it comes to a bit of a head when she's going off to Espenia, because he's going to, he finds out about what she's been up to, and all the secret stuff she's been doing.
Yeah, but he encourages her to speak up in meetings, and he really lets her know that he respects her opinion, and he wants to hear what her opinion is.
His limitations. He's like, you can do these bits, but I'm not having you doing clan stuff. You're a stone eye. You don't get involved. And he's such a traditionalist in so many ways. And you've got these two clashes of him being like, socially, he's just like, I don't care if you're queer. I don't care if you're a stone eye. Forget all that stuff. You're family, and that's what rules above everything else. And there's that traditional bit that guides. It's like family and Kekon first. Everything else is, as long as we're working towards that, it's immaterial. Like, those are all just side things. And so he just wants, like, well, you still don't get involved in this because that's not how we operate here. Like, Aisho protects you, and I want you to be protected, so I'm using that as justification.
But I mean, now that we're speaking about Wen, I really loved her kind of introduction as a perspective and her character. I think she's really, really interesting, and obviously she has this kind of epic finale alongside Anden, where she pulls the trigger and finishes off Sapunyo in the hotel room, and it's like, oh, that was badass, like full on. Like, she is, doesn't matter that she's not a green bone. She's, what do they say, green in the soul. Like, don't mess with Wen, and she sort of takes her revenge without batting an eye. Like, there's no hesitation towards the violence. It's like, this guy needs to die. And it made me think, like, this story could go in so many different ways. I feel like, because Fonda Lee killed off Lan in the first book, I was like, could we end up with like Wen being the pillar or something like that, by like, you know, something happens in the legacy book with Hilo, and actually because she is this like person who is, you know, willing to do whatever it takes, as we've just had demonstrated to us, could she actually be this really unconventional?
Well, because we're seeing this, like, there's a constant theme of like change from the old. What bits you allow in to change, and which bits you keep the same. And she's part of that whole dialogue. I mean, like Aitmadashi at the head of the mountain, everyone's like, a woman at the head, but she's had to be super brutal to get there. And over in Hilo with No Peak, you know, you've got married to a Stone Eye. You've got the fact that, you know, he's, you know, got his half Espenian, you know, queer brother hanging around and being like, this is all fine. Like, he's got the Make brothers who are like tainted and you know, like bad reputations. Like, again, don't care. So like there are these changes. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something major like that, you know, that, you know, because Kekon is having to change. And I think there's one thing that's still kind of like, I don't know, I feel a bit like there's a bit of kind of sits at odds with me, and it's the development of the Jade War and, like, you know, Espenia and Igatan, and, you know, the Refugee Act that gets passed. Like, you know, it's a really interesting thing because, of course, like, in theory, like, refugees from a war, we welcome them in, but, you know, we know in the novel it's like, well, Aitmadashi's using it to import Barakan crime gangs, and it's just like, what is this novel telling us about immigration and change through the movements of populations and opening up to the world? There's like I know, like, there's an inevitability within it about Espenia and like how these things aren't bad, they're just different. But like this weaponization of an immigration law left me feeling a little bit uncomfortable because, you know, it's just like, well, of course, if she passes the Refugee Act, everything bad will happen to Kekon. I feel a bit funny being on Hilo's side.
I mean, I had the same. I had a similar reflection, I guess, but I guess it's framed around the idea that that's happening because Ait is going to exploit the fact that that's possible, rather than as an actual obvious inevitability of it. So, like, we know as a reader, because of the perspectives that we've got, that is the motivation for the Mountain Clan to do that. But that's not necessarily the motivation of, like, the politicians or the, you know, or other people that might support that. Because
we constantly see this, you know, like throughout the novel, like, you know, the way that in Uiwa with Zapunyo and the, you know, the trafficking of Jade, and you've also got like Bero's storyline where he's like, you know, overseeing Abakai, you know, people filtering for Jade, those kind of things. It's like, right, okay, so just there's the second class people in this state, like, you know, because as much as Hilo's like, oh yeah, I don't care if you're Stone Eye, I feel like he's still probably pretty judgy of Abakai, like just been like, yeah, well, you stay down there, you're not worthy. Like, would he let someone like that into his family? You know, I still feel there's kind of like, there's such a class system within this nation, and Hilo, as much as affable, is like, yeah, if you took a step back and looked at this guy, it's like, oh yeah, sure, he's nice to his friends and stuff, but like, he's still quite happy to uphold these quite prejudicial societal structures.
But he's got that, I guess what we would call a privilege, you know, like he gets to be like, well, these issues, like, I guess we're making an assumption that he would have those prejudices.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's more that just like, this isn't something that he's ever really had to be bothered about. It doesn't affect him, and therefore his perception of the system as the way it works is like, well, this is fine. It works well for me. Like, and then occasionally he's challenged, you know, he falls in love with a Stone Eye, and that forces him to think, well, actually, you know, should I think differently? But even, as you say, even then he's kind of still thinking about it through the lens of the, you know, the clans, the danger, the you know, the traditions. You know, he's never been interested in the politics. That's always made very clear. Yeah, he's not like a political person. He's like a clan person. Like, that's his starting point, is like, you know, No Peak.
Yeah, and like, you know, we know that like he's effectively on the good side, because in the slow war, the Cold War analog, we've got the fact that, you know, he's siding with the America side, and, you know, Imadashi siding with the Russia, the Soviet Union. And so like it's playing upon our kind of what we pick up to be like, oh, okay, so, you know, oh, he's opening up more to Espenia, and that's okay. Like, it'll have its drawbacks and everything, but it's not as bad as Igatan, who are just like horrible, you know, criminals who are, you know, manufacturing and doing whatever it is that they're doing in the background with Jade and stuff. But Espenia, they're doing it with their soldiers, and they're training them up, and, you know, they're going to be these elite fighting units. And Port Massey's not so bad, you know. Like,
it's funny that like the criticism of Espenia is like everything's just about money. Like,
yeah,
you can buy anything, like, you know, and that's such a sort of American, you know, obvious kind of analog.
Just a quick question: Port Massey. If we were to give it an analog city, what city are you picturing?
It's really interesting because I think, as we said last time, like, I thought of Espenia more as just the West rather than America. And it could be America. It's really strange in the audiobook because a lot of the people there are given like Australian accents. So that
is she an Australian author? Is she?
No, I think she's Canadian.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, Canadian, because in my mind, I was like, you know, it seems to be perpetually wintry in Port Massey. I was like, oh, is this like a Toronto, a Vancouver? Like, it's not like
maybe,
New York.
yeah.
Because I don't know, it doesn't feel like a capital city when we see it described. It
No.
feels like kind of like a big city, but one where, like, you know, when the neighborhood that Dalglow's son oversees, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's an inner city, skyscrapers everywhere. It feels like a suburban, a bit more spread out. There's a sprawl to it, and it feels like he's on the edge of a decent city, but not like the metropolis of the world.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I didn't really sort of hone in on what I thought that was based on, but you could be right.
I mean, I just want to circle back to what you said. So a load of the Espinians have Australian accents.
Some of them had like well-spoken English. None of them had American. But I think that's because the narrator was American and he basically did all of the Kekon accents as like American accents.
So he had to differentiate.
So then he had to differentiate with other ones. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not based on America, but it's influenced the way I think about it. I was like, maybe this is like Melbourne or something like that, as a, you know, like.
Isn't that interesting that how the audiobook has affected your experience of it? Because for me, I was just like, they're all American. They're all going around like, oh, hi there, I'm America. And
how much can I buy your jade for?
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're wearing the big cowboy hats and things. It's just like, but yeah, like, you know, I just never pictured them as, for me, like, you know, the world map that you have in it, it's just like, okay, so, you know, and it's interesting because, you know, I just want to hold it up because you got Spenia is here and it's attached onto this larger thing. So like, it's almost like, is this South America, Central America kind of thing? And you've got Kekon all the way down over here. And so, you know, with Steppenland being entirely on the other side of this continent here, so I was like, oh well, this is Europe, and this is Scandinavia.
But yeah, I did think the way that she built out the Jade War into, you know, I think it could have been really easy to just be like, oh, this just is a extension of and a larger clan against clan thing in Kekon, but like building out that economic side of the war and the political side of it into, you know, Igatan and Espenia, and trying to build that influence and you know, gain a solid footing and all sorts of other things internationally, really like was very, very well done.
Oh yeah.
And like the amount of detail and like, okay, well, how might they go about doing this? What are the types of influence they might try to exert in different countries? I just thought it was really, really clever.
I think that element of it, the world building, is masterful. Like it's like, you know, because, you know, again, I think we said it last time, when we're doing Jade City, we're talking about the mechanics of Jade and so much of that, and this is just like, now we've moved from beyond the city into the world, and we spent a lot of this episode talking about the politics and the structure of it being such an important, interesting thing and how it affects the characters. All of that is done so well and really, really like impressive. Like I absolutely loved reading this book, and even though there's, like I said, some of the writing is, I'm starting to notice those bits more and more, where it's just, okay, this particular trait is kind of bugging me, but I'm lost in the world when I'm reading it, just being like, I need to know more, love learning about this world, like even the gripes of I think there's inevitably going to happen of like the increasing number of perspectives, and like when I think it's very much to the detriment of the storyline sometimes, like, where we don't see Barrow for 300 pages or however much it is. And suddenly he comes back and be like, yeah, it's me, Barrow, I'm back. And I'm still living this really sketchy, on the margins of society life. You're like, oh, yeah, because, of course, you've got Lan's Jade. And then there's that one chapter that's about 4 pages long where Mut poisons him. And then Mut then gets kidnapped and dies horrendously.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, okay. And then we pretty much just see Barrow again at the very end of the book.
Yeah, because I think we were texting, weren't we? And you were saying, oh, maybe actually it's about the story of Lun's Jade. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be really clever if it was just following whoever that went to and eventually it... And then obviously it's like, no, we get back to Barrow.
Barrow now has no Jade, and he's being involved in this kind of like, at the very end of the novel is him being approached, being like, would you like to take it down all the Jade people? He's like, yeah, you know what? I've had a pretty crappy time with Jade, so now I'm opposed to Jade.
Yeah, it feels like hopefully we're sort of honing in on what the relevance of Barrow is going to be, like that whole thing. And like you say, I said when we reviewed Jade City that I didn't really feel like his chapters worked that well because they were so few and far between. I kind of just feel exactly the same here. It just
I feel like
hasn't
either we
been
need
enough.
to have more about that perspective, flesh out all the characters going on in his world, rather than everything being quite peripheral. And like, I get it, Barrow's a very self-centered character. He's out for his own survival, and I completely understand the reasons why, because the world's treated him crap. He wasn't born into a Green Bone family. He's just trying to get by, and it's a really important perspective, I think, to still have in the novels. I just think the way it's done still feels unsatisfying. Like, I'm still like, I want more of this and for it to feel more central.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, unless it's going to turn out at the end of the novel that he walks in and being like, boom, and blows everybody up and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
like,
the payoff, because it hasn't been incredibly like enjoyable from my perspective on the Barrow front. The payoff for that now has to be really, really good.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what she decides to do with that. In terms of other perspectives, I didn't really think we had one of the Make brothers. I didn't really think that added very much. And I know you said like at the end of Jade City you were hoping for more of them, and I was like, we got a perspective, and then we just didn't really get much from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's going to be more, because the central core of the Call family is changing, and it's all centered around Healer, like, the Makes, who he loves, and you're going to have, and I think, again, with family being so central, it's such an interesting, important juxtaposition against Aitmadashi. I mean, the bit where the Ven family try and assassinate, plan to assassinate Aitmadashi,
and then she turns
and then she just wipes out all the guys, leaving all the wife and sisters alive. And you're like, oh, absolutely brutal. But it shows that she doesn't have the same control. Like, she's more powerful, but the clan aren't loyal to her in the same way that they're loyal to Hilo. She has good with the politics, she's good with the press, but there's still this inherent instability within her clan, partly because of who she is, that prejudice against her being a woman, how she took control, all these kinds of things. But it just shows that there's a building thing of, I anticipate for the third novel, which is, Hilo has his core family around him, and this is going to be one of the strengths of No Peak.
Yeah.
That helps him face off against the Mountain, who are more powerful, wealthier. Probably whatever's going to happen with Egatan is going to benefit them as well. Yeah.
But more divided.
Yeah, but there's an inherent weakness there, and that's
yeah.
going to come to the fore, I think, and that's so I can see how they're building it, and yeah, so if they had more perspectives from the Make brothers and, you know, Wen, whoever. Those are the people I want to hear from.
Yeah.
You know, like, is the other people outside the clan? I'm like, well, you know, what do we need you for? You know, like when we had the politician guy, you know, his brief little one. It's like, I get it. None of the characters are here for this, so you have to put it through someone. But like,
we don't need to see that happen, though. That is one of the things that we can find out through dialogue between other people, that this councilman's died and there's a suspicion that it's murder, and like it's all too convenient not to have been murder. But yeah, we get a perspective from Morrow for like half a chapter. We get Moot for that chapter where he's in the bar and he's
Pig and Pig Pub. What a terrible name for a pub.
We get one bit of a chapter from one of the Espenian gang leaders. We get a tiny little bit of a chapter that covers a conversation between Woon Poppy and who's the other guy that works in the weatherman's office, who gets sent off to Espenia to set up the office.
Tumashon?
Yeah. Where he sort of confronts him about having gone to Hilo to sack Shay.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I was just like, none of that stuff needed to happen.
Quick thing with Woon, I hope something comes of their kind of like his and Shay's long term, like pining for each other. It's like, I will work for you, but I want to leave. Oh my God. Oh, it's just I want to know more about this relationship, because you keep banging on about it, but I don't really believe it yet. Yeah. Like, I get it. We've been told that you've got a crush on her and she kind of into you, but there's not really much that's happened with it. It's just a lot of like exposition about how they feel. Yeah,
I guess it's a strange one, because I'm not sure I'm getting loads of it from Shay, which means that we're probably getting quite a lot of exposition about like how Woon Poppy feels, which again is another example of like, we're doing a lot of explaining stuff, where that could actually just be quite happily inferred from the dialogue and context.
Yeah, so there's a few too many perspectives. One last thing, I did like Shay and Ike having another chat in the Temple of Divine Return or whatever it is, and then, you know, they have a little catch up where they're like, you know, you could have sided with me like in the last book, and she's just like, no, I'm committed to the No Peak, and like they respect each other, and Ike doesn't respect Hilo. And, you know, I really like that dynamic that's kind of ongoing. And, you know, as I'm sure, you know, we jump forward a bit more in time in the next novel, that will be progressing, which will be really good. I have a couple of very short little thoughts before we wrap up. One, the sex scenes in this are sexier than some of the romanticises we've read. Like, there's been multiple times across both of these books where you're just like, this is okay. They're doing some more sex, and it's like she's not shying away from writing about it. So, like, you know, it verges on romantasy, but for some reason they're like, we can't plug that bit. But like, you know, like in the Night and the Moth, I was just like, you know, barely any sex in that at all. Yeah, and then in this, way more.
It's just such a strange feature of, I don't know whether it's publishing or whatever, but what you know, and I guess it could be a risk because she's a female author that it gets shoved down that route. But I guess that the primary function of the story isn't to bring relationships together. That's kind of secondary. But yeah, I think this all the time with like Joe Abercrombie stuff, where it's like there is so much sex and like all of that stuff just. Just never gonna get pitched as a romantasy.
Next bit. So last time we did Jade City, I mentioned about all the cars. When you listen to this one, did you notice all the cars?
Yeah, the Duchesse.
His white Duchesse, and also, but you just get this so like every single car has a name and a model. I was like, I love that you thought about this, but I do not know what they look like, and you do not really describe many of them. It's just kind of like, well, of course, as he gets out of his Spitfire X9, it's just like, cool, great.
Yeah, no idea, but you're happy. You could have just said car.
Big sports car, big sports car,
fancy car,
family SUV, Jeep. It's just like,
but just, I guess to close, thinking we're coming on to Jade Legacy, which we'll be doing in the next episode. I'm kind of a little bit clueless as to where this is going to land. Obviously, I think we have to have a conclusion between Ike Madashi, the Mountain, and No Peak and Hilo. But yeah, like it could go in any number of different directions with how kind of international and widespread everything's gone.
Yeah, I mean, now that the hostility has reached a point where they say it can't go back. What I think is interesting is, well, you know, one of the points that No Peak keeps making is you can't have a single clan dominant over all of Kekon. So Ike Madashi has to die, and someone else has to come in to rule Mountain, who's more amenable to a shared space, because it would seem kind of hypocritical for it to be such a recurrent theme of, you know, one clan shouldn't rule all of Kekon, and then for us to be like, oh, well, it's okay because the clan that we got the perspectives of won, so actually we can forget that. Like, I just feel like there needs to be a new status quo or a rejigging, like, you know, because when we've got Barrow being like, I'm going to take down the clans, no more Jade, like, I feel like there's going to be a rising of Abakai and, you know, Stone Eyes, and they have equal prominence within the society. That's what I'd like to see, because if it can't be, you know, No Peak and Mountain can never be at peace again, we need to have a new power come in, and it surely has to be the Jadeless.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting into it and seeing. I'm now thinking, whilst I was hoping after the first book that some of the writing stuff that we've not struggled with, but, you know, highlighted that there are issues with, I don't think they're going to get solved. No. I now think that this is just a feature of the writing style. Of the writing style, and like it's going to be about, you know, just accepting that and moving on, and perhaps that's going, you know, having looked at the length of the third book, there's going to be a little bit of a even more of it maybe.
Yeah, but let's not forget that, like, you know, I think our experience of these books so far have been like, yeah, the writing could be better, but the world building and everything, it's been an incredibly good read so far. Like, I've absolutely loved them, and I'm so engaged with the world. Love thinking, like, we're thinking about it from, like, within the context of the world rather than being a bit more removed. Yeah, because we believe in this world. And as I said, the Jade War, I think, is a step up from Jade City, and I really enjoyed Jade City.
Yeah, I think I would probably just have them on a par with each other. I think the big time jumps that we've had in Jade War, I think occasionally just made me find it a little bit more. Occasionally I'd be like, oh my God, are we like 6 months on from what just happened? Like, I'd have to sort of go back a bit and be like, oh yeah, we've had a big jump.
Andon was in Espenia for like 3 years.
Three and a half years, yeah, I think. So, you know, that covers quite a lot of time.
Quite a different time frame from the other one, which was like, you know, several months as Andon's in his last year at the academy. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think I found that not like difficult, but I've read some feedback, you know, online, some other reviews where people find that quite jarring and difficult to deal with. I don't like mind it, but I think I liked the sort of compact, intense nature of Jade City. But I loved Jade War as well. Like you say, the world building was great and continued to get better. Like, it was obviously something that she's clearly got this like vision of in her head and can really get down on paper really well. And the plot was good. I thought there were improvements in the character work in terms of like telling the story with emotion and motivation and stuff. Sometimes a little bit too much exposition, and the writing was still rough around the edges, but not to the point where at any point I was like, I don't want to carry on anymore. I enjoyed that Jade War expanded it out. Jade City was very focused on Kekon, but I was asking for more of this world, and I got it, and I think that's why I found this one so much more satisfying, because, you know, like, it's part of the story. Like, Kekon cannot exist in a vacuum. The world is outside coming in, and we felt that pressure in the first book, and I didn't get enough of what I wanted, but now I got it, and I'm really glad that we have, because I think that's been one of those real strengths of this novel. Yeah. And just the very final thing, because I've just remembered, do you remember I talked about, like, how does the police work in Kekon? And we actually got a little bit of explanation of how that happens, and it's basically what we thought. Is like, clan on clan stuff is like left to the clans to deal with. Anything outside of that is a crime, and there is a police force to deal with. So the Espenian police force is also quite useless, but also a bit corrupt. Yeah, as well. Like, great combination.
Yeah.
That's what you want on your badge.
Yeah.
Espenia, police of Espenia, useless and corrupt. So yeah. Shall we leave it there and look forward to the next episode, where obviously we're going to cover the final book in the
Green Bone Saga.
The Green Bone Saga, Jade Legacy, even longer again than Jade War. So get cracking on that if you want to join us in real time for this episode. And if you want to get in touch with us, let us know how you enjoyed or not Jade War, you know, whether you agreed with any of our criticisms, whether you you know, have a different perspective altogether. Get in touch either if you're with us on YouTube down in the comments, also like and subscribe while you're here, or on social media at Escapists Anonymous Pod across Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. So we'd love to hear from you. But in the meantime, thanks ever so much for listening along, watching along, wherever you're doing so. That means a lot to us. And all that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.